Good morning, everybody. This is Walk the Dog Season 2, episode, I believe, 18? Again, if I start losing track, sorry, I always forget to check the number before I start filming. Yeah, and I'm filming this Monday morning, so you'll see this on hopefully Tuesday. And it's been a good weekend. Patch Rundown came out, Monday Morning Meta Report came out, there were tournaments this weekend. And yeah, we're approaching patch 16.3 on Thursday, which should be good. So yeah. On the TFT side of things, the only thing I can tell you is I tried to play one game this weekend. I was doing other stuff, getting ready for my trip to LA. I sat down, I played one game, and my computer kept blue screening on League. And so I had to do that thing where I kept awkwardly switching between mobile and PC and mobile and PC, and then finish the game on mobile. And the fact that I squeezed out a fourth, we take those. I didn't lose LP, but my computer might be starting on its last legs. Apparently the last time I upgraded, I never upgraded the processor, so the processor's pretty old. I'm still running Windows 10, and apparently I can't upgrade to Windows 11, so I don't know. I might have to fix that, but yeah. So I personally can't tell you that I've played much. Obviously, was working on Futureland stuff, which had another twist and turn and crazy shenanigans there. But yeah, definitely tried to watch some of the tournament. Not going to repeat all the stuff I said on the Monday Morning Meta Report, but yeah, overall, what I will say though is I'm excited for the patch. I definitely want to wake up early Thursday and get some games in, see how the patch feels, hoping Targon's playable, things like that. I'll also say, 2-week trip to LA. I know my wife's not particularly excited. She never likes me being gone that long, but got stuff to do in Futureland, so I'll be at Riot Campus. Yeah, so that'll be that. But that's the main things going on here. Like I said, I just gotta finish this walk the dog, finish packing, and off I go to LA. So tomorrow's episode will hopefully be on the Riot Campus with a different background. For those of you that were joking about this being an anime now with seasons and episodes, I guess we're entering a different arc, the Riot arc. Was it originally in the manga? I don't remember. Anyway, a couple questions I wanted to talk about today. Since I've taken a couple days break, posted the patch rundown, I saw some questions. So actually the first question comes from Twitter. I didn't reply to it on Twitter. I replied to it, I guess, maybe I'm just showing my age by calling it Twitter. I'm not supposed to call it that? I don't know. Anyway, the question is, hey, with the Diana change being tied to Leona, why do that? Why tie Diana directly to Leona instead of making her more flexible? And this is a really interesting question because oftentimes when we throw out the word flexible, it's often as always positive, right? Like we should always make the game more flexible if we can, right? Well, one of the challenges is, let's take a simple, one cost champion like Alawi, and if we take Brawler off of Alawi and give her associated power, is she more flexible? Yeah, sure, right? She doesn't have to be played with Brawler necessarily. And so inherently, flexibility is often at the opposite end of traits, right? Traits inherently mean you are supposed to play it along this line. Now, the question becomes, the power of the trait worth the trade-off of playing suboptimal units? That's always the discussion, right? A good example of this was Lucian Senna. Did Lucian Senna really need Gunslinger? No, not necessarily. Because, the power that Gunslinger provided didn't synergize well with the primary thing that Lucian and Senna were providing to a team comp, right? Like, if you play 2 Gunslinger, the Black Mist doesn't get any better. She doesn't cast any sooner, and because the primary thing Lucian and Senna were providing wasn't their damage, and so the trait didn't necessarily amplify the damage, and so it was almost basically never worth it to run 2 Gunslinger unless, you were synergizing with a comp that already happened to have Gunslinger in it, like, say, Bilgewater, right? But on the opposite end, if you make the trait too powerful, right? And this happened like Disruptor on PBE, for example, was like, if you did not have 2 Disruptor in, the champions basically could not be played without 2 Disruptor. And that is the opposite of flexible, right? And so oftentimes when we're balancing the power that a trait can provide, that's what we have to keep in mind. It's like, if the trait doesn't provide enough power, then the champion will never be played within that trait. If the trait provides too much power, then we're ruining all flexibility, and you have to play it in exactly that way and nothing else, right? And that continues to be a thin line. It will always be a thin line. Now, why am I talking about traits? Because the way you can look at the Leona-Diana relationship is essentially there's a trait, right? Imagine if the 2 of them said Targon and partners, or whatever you want to call it, and the partners trait said, as long as Diana is alive, or Leona is alive, Diana gets AP. That's a trait, right? That's really all it is. And the question is, how much power is that trait providing? If it's providing too much, then yes, you will always have to run Leona and Diana together, which lowers the flexibility of comps. That's true. Likewise, if the power is not enough, then you will never run Leona and Diana, or it won't really be worth it. And that's the balance line we have to get to. So, with this new trait, is 4 AP per second really going to make or break Diana? We'll find out, right? Like, that's going to be the question. I definitely think it will make her better. And in this case, we compared this to the Lucian Senna example, where Gunslinger doesn't really amplify her primary purpose. Diana's primary purpose is being amplified greatly by AP, right? It amplifies both her shield and her power. So I believe that the answer is that you're going to want this. Now, one of the other reasons I think in this particular case we can do this is because, well, how do you get Diana? Well, you have to play Leona. You have to hit a 2-star Leona and put 3 items on her. Now, granted, the way people were doing that was they were building the 3 Diana items, putting the 3 Diana items on a Leona, and then instantly throwing away the Leona. Well, that's not really great. Especially because we had literally designed them to work together, right? Like, anything that Leona hit with her spell, Diana was also considering tagged, and that was a good thing. But what people were finding is that was actually slowing down Diana getting back to the back line and making her cast take longer. So that made, Leona weakened her, which was the opposite of what we were going for. So again, this always goes back to design intent, right? The design intent was Diana should be good, but if you play her with Leona, she gets to be a little better. That was always the intent. So that's kind of what we're going for here now. And so now we're kind of back in this world where that's the exact same trade-off, right? Where Diana will stick to the back line more without Leona because she won't be jumping around. But if you put Leona in, you're going to be able to get the extra AP. The spell will take longer, and you'll be able to do more damage and ramp up, right? That's the trade-off. So again, the hope here is that we don't 100% eliminate. Now, I'm sure some skeptic is going, yeah, you didn't eliminate her last patch, lol, 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 lol. And I mean, yeah, balance is hard, right? Getting the number exactly right. Although with Diana, we purposely kind of win a little hard because these assassins, man, when they're frustrating, it's funny, I even watched Froden's version of the patch rundown, and you can just hear it in his voice where he's like, oh God, if Diana's back, I'm just going to, the people who do not like assassins really do not like them. That is for sure. But, so all of this is to say that, why are we tying Leona to Diana? Because they were a pair that were designed to play together, and we missed the mark when we launched the set. And the idea here being that the 2 don't necessarily have to play together, but if they do, they get a benefit, almost like a hidden trait. That's kind of the design intent. That's what we want to do. And we'll evaluate, right? If 4 AP is too much per second, is it supposed to be 3 and Diana has a little higher base? Maybe. But I don't think it's that restrictive. Diana's already a Targon unit anyway. She should be fairly strong. You have to play Leona to get her anyway. I don't know. I personally don't think it's going to be that big an issue. And I personally think seeing some Targon comps actually be able to be played will be good. Now, the one thing I'll tell you from our testing early on in dev, different power levels, is, and I've seen nobody talk about this on Reddit and Twitter, so this is my one shot call, we'll see. But we will see a rise of double trouble Leona Diana comps. That's, during dev, we definitely saw some of that. We made some adjustments so it wasn't the case, but will we see some? Maybe. That's my dark horse comp that, if it gets discovered, it'll be a week into 16.3. There's my crazy shot call. So, cool. All right. Next question actually came from a DM on Discord. Not that you should be DMing me questions, but A, this just proves that I do read every DM. I've always told you I do. And B, I thought it was an interesting question worth talking about because it gets asked all the time. And I've definitely answered this before, but I'll try to explain it again. And I haven't explained it on Walk the Dog in a while before. But the question is, why do patches include both buffs and nerfs? Why don't you just take a patch and then just do nerfs and see how it plays out, and then decide if you need to also do buffs, or vice versa? Why don't you just do a bunch of buffs, see how it plays out, then decide if you need to do a bunch of nerfs? There's a bunch of reasons. The first reason is that we only have so many patches before the set moves on, right? And so if we had to, do it very slowly, one at a time, right? Okay, here's some nerfs. Now let's wait. Oh, Noxus still isn't playable. Now let's just do buffs, right? It might be 4 weeks before something that needs a buff might get a buff. And that's a long time to wait before something is really playable. So the time, if we could do this every day, maybe, right? Maybe you have today's buff day. Okay, fine. You could go that way, but that's not the time frame we're working on, right? The time frame we're working on is a patch every 2 weeks. And so waiting 4 weeks to get a buff could be pretty bad. Next is the fact that it's really just I don't know how to explain this without sounding bad, but basically it's too simple-brained and kind of shows a lack of understanding if that's how you think we have to do it. And the reason I say that is it's actually a lot easier than you think, right? It's what you have to do is you sort of have to take a comp that you consider baseline, right? This is where we want it to be. Let's use Demacia as the example. Let's pretend Demacia with Sona reroll is a really good baseline comp. And when I say reroll Sona, I mean and you leveled up, found a Gallia 1, and you're playing around a Garen, and you've got a Luxin, right? Let's say that is a good baseline comp, okay? It's pretty easy from there to compare, okay, well, which comps are doing better than that are too strong, right? It's oh, well, when Ziggs and Ryze gets put together, it absolutely decimates that comp and it never has a chance of winning at any point. Okay, that might be a problem. We might need to nerf it. Or if Brock can destroy that comp, that might need a nerf, right? You can evaluate which comps are stronger than your baseline. Likewise, if you're, looking at Noxus and you're hey, can Noxus ever beat Demacia? No, it can't. So why would we wait to buff Noxus while we're nerfing Ryze and Ziggs when we know both of these things need to be changed, right? And nerfing Ryze and Ziggs does not all of a sudden make Noxus better. That's definitely not true because Noxus will still run into Demacia, right? And still get beat by Demacia, right? And so it's really easy to essentially establish a baseline and then go which comps are performing better, which comps are performing worse, And a lot of this you can see, I'm explaining this in terms of comps, but comps is only one axis of this, right? Another axis of this is, one of the ways I really like to play is tempo. What champions can you win streak or not win streak with, for example? Which champions are just completely unplayable to win streak? I'll use Ahri as an example. I think Ahri is a really good baseline 3 cost. I think if you get her early and you get some items, she's really strong. I think she does a lot of damage, and she falls off when the 4 costs start showing up. Sounds great. How does Ahri compare to LeBlanc? Is LeBlanc worse? Well, you should probably buff her, right? And again, you have to check the connected tissue, right? Well, yeah, but LeBlanc's in Noxus and vice versa, right? All of these things have to be evaluated, and I don't know why we would restrict ourselves to go, look, LeBlanc's worse than Ari, but sorry, it's a nerf patch. I guess we can't buff LeBlanc. That doesn't really make a bunch of sense, right? And so a lot of the times the direction, and this is also, by the way, this is the easiest part of making a patch, is determining what needs buffs and nerfs, right? Like that's such the easy part. We could hire any challenger off the street and they could probably do this part of the job. It's you play the game a bunch and you just go like, yep, LeBlanc is worse than Ari. I recognize this. I looked at the stats. I understand that. Easy, right? Ziggs is better than Mel. Great. No problem. So then the question becomes, well, then how come patches don't land perfect? Well, because now we have to do the hard part of the patch. And the hard part of the patch is, okay, Ari is better than LeBlanc. So what type of buff does LeBlanc need exactly to be on the exact level as Ari, but also taken into consideration that her traits and everything else? And well, what about Darius? Does Darius also need a buff? Well, if you buff Darius and LeBlanc, is now Ari not good enough, right? Like the severity of the change, the exact specifications of the change, that's the complex part. That's the part that, like, if you want to criticize or say we get wrong, yeah, probably sometimes, because that's the hard part, right? So to simplify that, and because like, well, actually it turns out they buffed LeBlanc 8%, but it was supposed to be 12%, and they got it wrong, therefore they should only do buffs and nerfs patch separate. Huh? Right? Like that's not really good logic. The logic is we were right on the direction, right? So like, let's use Jinx from the last patch as an example. Very clear Jinx needed a large buff, and Jinx got a large buff. Actually, Jinx is maybe not the best example because she got reworked. I actually think LeBlanc is a better example, right? LeBlanc needed a buff. She got a very large buff, and now is she playable? Better, yeah. Is she meta? No, right? Like, and so did we get the LeBlanc number exactly right? No, maybe it should have been another 5% on top of what we had. Hard to say, right? Like, that's the challenging part. But were we correct in the direction? Yes, right? And in fact, if you have any criticisms of our patches lately, I know people are like, Balance Thrash, they killed Tryndamere, they killed T-Hex, etc., etc. Same thing, right? It's the severity of the buff and nerf, right? That's the hard part, but that's also the part that no one really agrees on. I bet if you sat, let's take all the challenger players who are really, really good at Bilgewater, and you sat them down and you said, hey guys, you have to nerf Bilgewater. What would you do to nerf it? I bet you'd get 30 different answers, right? It'd be like, oh, just nerf early TF. Oh, just nerf early Graves. Oh, just lower the bilge tokens. Oh, remove toggling. Oh, make Tom Kench not as high of a peak. Oh, nerf fit. Like, everyone would tell you a different answer for how to nerf bilge, because bilge is such a complicated trait with a variety of things, all of which contribute in some way to the power of Bilgewater. So, but again, is it clear that Bilgewater needs nerfed? Yeah, of course, easy, right? So all of this is a long-winded answer to say that we should never limit ourselves to just buffing and just nerfing. If we know something needs buffed, we should buff it. If we know something needs nerfed, we should nerf it. And doing those at the same time is totally fine. That does not cause problems. The challenge will always be, what is the actual number and severity of the change, the degree, the magnitude, right? Sometimes you lower something 2% and it can have a wild swing. Other times you can buff something 20% and it does nothing, right? The Aurelian Soul buff. Holy cow, that Aurelian Soul buff was huge last patch. Did it do anything? No. Champ was still Garbo, right? Because it wasn't a proper identification of, now it was a rush job, so of course it wasn't, but it wasn't a proper identification of what was wrong with Aurelian Soul. Aurelian Soul didn't necessarily need his central cast to do more damage, and when he succeeded, it was because he reached the meteors, and so nothing changed, So, yeah. So, long-winded answer, but that's why, and I will continue to believe this, that, no, we should never limit ourselves to just buffs or nerfs. That's the wrong way to do it. So, cool. All right. The questions are heavy today. And what time is it? I've been talking a while. Ooh, I can only do one more heavy question, I think. Okay. I'll do this one. What would be a sign that TFT's life is coming to an end? And the person isn't asking this question as a hater or anything like that. They're simply describing that, like, it's hard to tell from a live service game. Games have ups, games have downs. When would it be a sign that the game is like, okay, maybe we finally reached the end of this life? And this is an interesting, like, industry level question. And I'll also tell you that everything I'm about to answer is just my opinion. And I would bet you our insights guys or our product folks would give you a completely different answer. And they might be like, that's not the way to look at it. So I'm just going to tell you my opinion, though. And the answer, I believe, actually changes relative to how long the product has been in existence, right? So, for example, I think when TFT was 1 year old, the signs that, like, hey, it was on the decline are very different than a game that is like 6 years old, or a game like WoW at this point, right? Like, World of Warcraft's been around more than 20 years. What would be a sign that it's dying? Can it die, right? Like, that's the interesting thing. And I think for TFT specifically, originally, right, like I've always told this story that, like, during set, 2 to 3, because set 1 came out, we had a really, really high peak because everyone was hyped to play Riot's second game. And then set 2 came out and it did nothing. Numbers just kept going down and down and down and down. Like, there was not really even a bump. Every time we added new champions, nothing was stopping the bleeding. Numbers just kept going down and down and down and down. And so there was this theory that, like, because again, the game had only been around like a year, maybe less. And so it's like, well, what's a sign that it's dying? Player numbers are continually dropping, right? And we're not stabilizing, and revenue's not great. And so, that would be the answer there. Player numbers go down, revenue's decreasing, etc. But what happened was we released set 3, we released mobile, COVID happened, then we saw a spike, and it was like, okay, we've stabilized. And now we're starting to see that, okay, maybe this isn't dead, But now, fast forward to a game that's now been around for 6 or 7 years, and we've seen, numbers go up, numbers go down, revenue go up, revenue go down. We have patterns, we have things like that. Time happens, novelty fades, established audience is what it is. So for us, essentially what would have to happen is we have 5 years of data, or 5 or 6 years of data of the last years of sets. And we know what, like, our worst sets look like. We know what our best sets look like. We know, for example, sets that come out at a specific time of year may perform better than sets that come out at other specific times of year. We also know that, hey, if there's competition in certain regions, games may go up and down, right? Sets will perform really well in one region. Like, maybe Korea pops off this set, and maybe the next set, Taiwan pops off. Like, there's so much data now that we can analyze and go, okay, what's actually happening right now? So that, let's say, and this is hypothetical, but let's say set 17 came out and it was 20% lower than set 16. Okay, well, that's not a sign the game's dying. That's just, hey, it might be a regional difference, might be a time. There's a bunch of factors that kick in. But to your original question, what would be the sign that the game is actually dying? What would have to happen, I would say, would be an entire year's worth of sets all performing lower than the previous years. And even then, it would probably take 2 or 3 consecutive years of that at this point. Because, like, again, let's just, hypothetical example here. Let's say 17, 18, and 19 all came out and all did worse than 14 and 15 and 16, right? That could be a lot of things. That could be, economic pressures. That could be, again, a competitor came out. That could be whatever, right? Like Grand Theft Auto 7 came out and all of a sudden our numbers are like, there could be a bunch of reasons. That doesn't necessarily mean the game's dying. It might mean we'd need to, like, come up with something cool and new to raise them back up, but that doesn't mean it's dead. So like I said, I think it would take multiple years of that. Now, if, like, if that happened for 17, 18, 19, then 20, 21, 22 come out and they're lower, and 23, 24, 25 come out and they're lower, and all of a sudden we're at like 40% of where we started. Okay, that might be a sign. And, like, what would probably start to happen there is you might see, oh, the design team start to shrunk, or, oh, they switch back to 2 sets a year, or, like that, I think, would start to be a sign that the game was dying. Thankfully, that nothing remotely like that has come anywhere close to happening. I can tell you that in the last 6 years, never once have I heard, pretty much since set 4, have I heard that TFT might be dying. trying to think. I guess maybe set 5. Set 5 had a little bit of a scare. But that was, yeah, we fixed that quick. Anything since then? No, I think that's about it. So, yeah. So, like I said, definitely nothing like that. But that would be the sign. I think the other sign, hilariously enough, is just people aren't talking about it as much anymore. But that one's always hard because, especially with the way the internet works nowadays, with like algorithms and things like that, you may not notice people are talking about things. It's weird because so many of the sites now will only show you things that you're interested in. So like I see on the internet all the time on Twitter people talking about TFT, and I never see them talking about Genshin Impact anymore. But again, that's just the algorithm, and I would bet that if you look by per volume, I would bet Genshin's being talked about more than TFT, right? Like that's just the algorithm masking what I see and perceive, which is also not great because it creates these little echo chambers of reality, and they're not actually factual reality. And so that's why you have to be really careful when you look at your perception of online discourse, because it can be really narrow and limited based on stupid algorithms and things like that. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, all this is to say is your original question was, what would be a sign TFT is dying? And it would be, at this point, because we've been around for a while, multiple years in a row of continued decline. And again, to fast forward this to like let's say we'd been around a long time, like League or, Magic the Gathering or World of Warcraft, right? Like, what would be signs those games are dying, right? League's been dying, quote unquote, for like 10 years now. If you look at online discourse, people will say League is dying, League is dying, League is dying. And then, surprise, Worlds has more viewers than ever. Or, surprise, ARAM Mayhem comes out and, player numbers go up a bunch. So, I don't know. I feel like once a live service game has been around for like more than 5 years, unless they drastically screw it up, which there are examples of, and I won't call them out, if you do the right thing and maintain, it's pretty hard to kill a game once you get past that hump. So, I don't know. With TFT, I'm not worried about it because we can just keep doing great things and it'll be fine. But you never know. I mean, if something kills TFT, it'll be something no one predicted, out of our control, right? Like, really dumb example would be, no, even then, okay, really dumb example would be someone creates a new virtual reality device that works like Sword Art Online, and we actually get these like amazing games, and everyone switches to that, and all of our numbers drop because everyone's playing the new Sword Art Online. Sure, in that world, like maybe we lose a bunch of players, but even in that world, you know what happens is we all go, quick, how do we port TFT to this virtual device? And guess what? Now you can play TFT and Sword Art Online. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm not too worried about this, but you asked the question. That's kind of my answer. And I'm not. I don't know. I don't think it'll be happening soon. So, yeah. All right. What time? All right. Yep. That's it. So I only got through 3 questions today, which is a shame. I had written down 6, but apparently I yapped too much. So sorry about that. All right. Yeah. So like I said, starting tomorrow, you'll see these from Riot because I'll be in LA. I'll be in LA for 2 weeks. I'll be hopefully getting some guests on that can maybe join me. You can talk about some various things. Patch comes out. It'll be fun. Yada, yada, yada. All good stuff. The train marches on. All right. Cool. That's going to do it for me. Until next time, take it easy.